All right, welcome back to another episode, Digital Recruiter Podcast. I have Bryan Wilson on today and have a pretty cool show today. We're going to talk about tools and tech and making them accessible and not costing an arm and a leg. He's got an awesome background. He's worked with thousands of recruiters and agencies by now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's the founder of Parsley, VP of Strategy at StaffUp. Bryan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Clark. Thanks for having me, man. That's exciting to be here. I know we've tried a few times and finally made it happen here. So, yeah, I'm excited to be here.
We're doing different platforms, different locations, backgrounds. It's all good. We go with the flow here at the Digital Recruiter, right? We got to be able to evolve and adapt and go. I mean, that's the industry that we're in. So,
absolutely,
all good things in due time. So, no, I'm excited to chat and for people to kind of learn more about Parsley, because again, you're talking my language with like being lean and mean and effective. I think there's so much noise out there just in general, especially in the recruiting industry. You're really cool. You have a really cool background, so I'm excited to kind of dive into it. But maybe kind of catch the listeners up to speed on kind of how you even got in the recruiting world.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because my job before being a recruiter was washing windows. This was a long time ago,
like
obviously.
Building windows, car windows. Yeah.
No, literally, out of high school, man. I did an exchange program as an exchange student in Switzerland when I was at my last year of high school, and I came back, graduated, needed a summer job. So I started washing windows, and my brother-in-law, he was doing this thing called recruiting, and I saw he was driving this really nice truck, and I was like, what's going on, man? Like, I don't feel like you're that much smarter than me, even though he probably very much is.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what, we're actually hiring at our company. We're looking for a sourcer right now. I didn't know what the heck that was.
Yeah.
So come in, interview, you got a good personality. We'll see what's going on, right?
That's all it takes to get into recruiting, by the way. Yeah.
I think that's how a lot of us kind of felt.
Is availability, right? And a good personality. That's how I got hired. And I still don't understand it, but it worked. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if you had the same experience, but it's like, I'm like, okay, interviewing tips. This is before like you Google stuff, right? So asking friends, like, what do I do? This is really my first professional interview. I'm thinking, questions, I got to be prepared, whatever, get in there. And they're like, here's a phone, here's a script, let's just see how you do on the phone, kind of a thing, right? So it kind of started that way, just being a sourcer, just literally like, we want you to call candidates, just do intakes, that kind of stuff, run through basic questions, get their salary requirements, those kind of things. And then kind of quickly within a couple months, kind of progressed to doing the full desk recruiting stuff, right? Because at that time I was 17, 17 or 18, essentially,
wow.
Diving into that. Yeah.
I mean, you just hit it hard. You got the diploma and hit it hard.
Well, this was the late 90s. So, in all fairness, anybody that had a phone and could basically form a sentence or two could make six figures in recruiting, right? I mean, right before the .com bust. So like, pets.com and all these, like just everything, like just kind of that before that big burst. So, I mean, yeah, we had Java engineers back then, I remember, that were getting Porsches as sign-on bonuses, right? You'd place somebody one day, you'd call them 90 days later, you'd place them somebody else, like bad stuff like that happening in the recruiting industry.
Nuts. Were you focused more on like tech engineer placements?
It was all mostly software developers, right? Okay. In the Bay Area. We had a virtual mailbox saying we were in Palo Alto, but we were all in Idaho, in Sun Valley, Idaho. So we had our, virtual phone numbers, all that kind of stuff. And just, we actually pretended like we were in the Bay Area, believe it or not. So I know a lot of facts about the Bay Area, but I really spent no time there.
That's amazing. Yeah, you're the best virtual tour guide there is for the Bay Area. No, that's amazing. I will add, I had a similar feeling when I started Aerotech. Aerotech provides great training, but I remember kind of being on the phone being like, I feel like I have way too much responsibility for how little I know about what's going on right now. with like
Mm-hmm.
placing someone and employment laws, especially working in I was actually in California, and there's I was like, am I prepared to do this? Like they give great training, but there's just things that you just kind of have to jump the gap in a sense. Like there's really no way to learn but just getting the reps in
Yeah.
recruiting, and you're just gonna crack some eggs, and that's all there is to it. And hopefully you don't get sued in the beginning because you don't ask someone the background check question the right way or whatever it is.
It's truly the fake it till you make it type thing, right? Trial by fire. It's like you're either going to survive and thrive or you're not and you're gone.
Yeah, it really is. So was it pretty smooth for you starting out recruiting? Were you just doing recruiting only, not full desk, or like it sounds like money was falling off trees? So like did that last for a couple years, or like what was the beginning of the journey like?
We had a cool model. It was, I mean, the first job was just sourcer. So it's really just providing support to the recruiters, just doing as many intakes, qualifications of candidates as you can. Because this was back in the day when like Monster and Career Builder were like the main tools that you use.
Yeah.
So every single day it's hop on the boards, get there as early as possible, find all the new candidates that come in that kind of match your search criteria and just boom, 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 call, just intake, right? Get them qualified. And then we worked in a team-based model. So it was like a group-based commission. So everybody's getting orders, everybody's getting candidates. But then, when you get a new candidate, you go and then you match them against all the job boarders. It's just about as many submissions as you can get out, leads to this many interviews, leads to this many offers, leads to this many placements. And then the more senior you get in the team, the higher percentage you got of the commission, of the group commission pot, essentially.
Gotcha. And how long were you? Did you go? So you go from sourcing to recruiting to sales, or did you ever get to the
It's
sales?
full desk. Yeah, no, it was yeah. Get we called them runners, right? I think different people have different words for these, but we had our runners. So you get your awesome sales engineer or Java developer. You just start cold calling, get as many job orders as you can, and then switch to kind of the recruiting mode in the evening, getting submissions out. But no, I did full desk from day one, pretty much.
That's awesome. And so, how long were you at that firm to start with?
I was there for, gosh, I don't even remember, maybe like 2 years or something like that. Gotcha. And then we kind of went through a merger with another company. Yep. And then, after 2 full years of running recruiting, I knew everything there was that I needed to know to run my own business. So, why not go out and do my own
2 years? I've seen 2 days. So yesterday I heard of 2 weeks. So yeah.
And so we did that. We started our own business, and we were about a month in, and that's when the bubble burst, the .com bubble burst. So I learned what it was really like to build a company, and that money does indeed not grow on trees, and it basically ruined me. And we spent the next 4 years, felt like reinventing our agency every 6 months. You know what I mean? Trying to find a niche that would work. And so we tried healthcare, we tried, all sorts of different things, right?
What did you find? Because I'm actually glad you brought that up. What did you learn in all that? Trying to like find a different niche, and then it sounds like I know you found one that worked for you, but like what was that process like, and like when did you decide to kind of switch to marketing something else, and like when did you like realize like, oh, you found one that you can kind of stick with? Like what was that process like?
Yeah, well, first off, I think patience is definitely a virtue. We probably got a little impatient and being very still green, right? Thought we knew everything. We weren't very smart, in terms of like trying to build a longer pipeline and that kind of stuff. So I think we're just by our nature, it's like, oh, this isn't working. Give it 2 weeks. Let's try something else, right? Whereas if we had just, like you said, put in more reps, given it more time, that pipeline would have built. We probably would have had more success. So that was just being naive as a original, first business kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
But I think we finally learned it after maybe our fourth or fifth niche there, decided we need to stick to this a little bit longer. And that's, we found kind of our niche in diagnostic imaging inside of healthcare, believe it or not, nuclear medicine. So we kind of niched down a lot more and said, okay, let's just focus on one thing, try to be really, really good at it, get as many candidates in our network and as many clients in our network, just focusing on this really good niche. And that worked pretty well for us for a while.
I'm starting to really understand and hear the origins of kind of why you're doing, of kind of how you're doing what you're doing now. It feels, that's do these interviews, it does feel almost like a superhero origin story, right? Like, how do you get to the successful spot? Now it came from kind of, again, learning a lot of lessons the hard way. As we're kind of trying to figure out those problems. How long did it take before it kind of clicked that you were like, okay, yeah, this is our niche now?
Mm. I don't know. Maybe
Like a
maybe
year,
6 months, a
6 months.
year, or something like that.
It's
Yeah, I
about
mean, that
right.
was a long time ago, man.
Yeah.
That was like 20,
I
23
know.
years
I'm
ago.
putting you on the spot, man. We got to go in the time machine to get back. But no, I think the lesson is like 6 to 12 months typically seems to be what you have to give. And it's not 6 to 12 days or 6 to 12 weeks, even. It's really that time frame to really build that pool of candidates, build a pipeline of potential clients, right? Start to get a couple of agreements, get candidates through, get people started, and get paid, and all that. Like it takes that long. And I just think the reason I bring it up and I put you on the spot to think back 20 years ago is I hear so much. I know you're working on the tech side now, recruiting, of just people that want the results yesterday and the next day. It's like, wait, like you're not really respecting everything that goes on in recruiting
Right.
and sales to really build a really profitable, scalable recruiting agency, right? Like anyone can make a placement or two, right? But how are you doing that time and time again and building it out and helping other people eat on your team, and all that, be consistent, navigate the ups and downs? Like it takes time and work and effort. And I think because it's a low barrier to entry industry, people are like, oh, I can have success right away. And it's like, it's just depending on the timing, maybe you could,
Right.
right? You could get Porsches or whatever, but those good times never last. It's also cyclical in recruiting. So
And
yeah,
everybody else and their brother is doing it at the exact same time too, right? It's kind of like
exactly.
real estate in that sense. It's like when the housing market's good, then like everybody and their brother is a realtor, right? But it's like the
Yeah,
good ones are the ones that last. And I think if I had to redo it all again, I never would have switched niche in the first place. I would have stuck it out. I would have kept my relationships going. I would have showed my clients and my candidates I work with that, I was there for them for the long haul. And those relationships would have paid off way better when tech obviously inevitably went back up, right?
yeah. Just
That was the
having
big
that,
mistake.
like, yeah, just having that, like, it's not even necessarily. I mean, the history can always kind of maybe it doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, right?
Mm.
Like these things always goes in cycle, and I think it's just like that ego maybe sometimes is just, well, we gotta make all the money yesterday, we gotta do it now. It's just like just having that patience, that vision, and like, yes, tomorrow isn't promised to any of us, but just that's always been the mistakes I've made, have been rushing in business versus just being patient, make sure the bills are paid, but be patient as like much as calm, cool, and collected as much as you can. And the stuff just kind of comes around. People are so emotional and reactive that if you're able to just not be that way, you can keep so many doors open, opportunities for the right timing. Again, that's what really this industry is about, is the right timing. Uh,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
okay.
Invest in those relationships though. They definitely pay off long term, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. So speaking of those relationships, I guess, how did you get it? You're recruiting for a few years. When did you kind of make that switch to kind of more of like the tech side and kind of ATS, CRMs? Like, how did that kind of come to be?
yeah. So those 4 years starting our own agency, like I said, I mean, it was crazy, these ups and downs, blah, blah, blah. We lost some money, we made some money.
Yeah.
At the end of about 4 years, it was also a family business. So we had family involved and stuff. So
Yeah.
I won't get into all the family dynamics, but
Yeah.
just if you're getting in business with family, make sure it's what you want to do, right? And always put
Yeah.
the family before the business. So long story short, I decided I didn't want to be part of it anymore because it wasn't going to be a good situation, and so I decided to go and try my hand at software.
Yeah.
So there was a local software company looking for some senior salespeople, and that's where I went. Decided to kind of, so I went into the software side essentially.
And what was, I mean, kind of what was that transition like? I mean, did you love it right away? Was it kind of a learning curve? Um,
It was a bit weird because it's a reinvention, right? I'm still pretty young at this point, so
yeah.
going into that role. So, but yeah, I mean, moving from six-figure income to now back to like this kind of base salary, and it's like, okay, cool. Like somebody else is paying my benefits, and it's just a 9 to 5 kind of thing. So there are definitely some pros and some cons, but it kind of reset me into like, okay, this is like real normal corporate America. Maybe
Yes.
typical recruiting is too, but I've always kind of seen them as like different for some
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
Um, And so yeah, just starting to get that experience and doing more software account management and sales and things like that.
Did you kind of end up getting a little bit more appreciation kind of for the recruiting side and kind of like owning your own business? Like, did it kind of change your perspective? Because it's hard when you're in the heat of the moment, especially if it's family business or trying to find a different niche. Kind of like, did it make you kind of realize anything about the recruiting industry when you kind of stepped outside of it?
Well, one, it's not easy. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think recruiting is by any means an easy profession if that's what people think that it's going to be, but it is very, very rewarding in the sense that you can,
Yeah.
again, chart your own path and those kind of things. I mean, hindsight being 2020, I might have stayed doing doing that and stuck it out, or maybe started my own agency and gone away from the family, something like that.
Yeah.
But I think me tasting that originally and then going into corporate America, I kept coming back to wanting to be an entrepreneur. Like it gave me that entrepreneur bug
Yeah.
to be like, okay, I do like the software side too. Like I'm kind of a nerd, right? But I
Yeah.
love that charting my own path, choosing my own schedule, like that part of recruiting that, never left me, still there today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So then, okay, so you move ahead, you go to job adder for a few years, right? Kind of probably fast forwarding. It seemed like I mean, that was a big deal because you were there early on and really saw that thing blow up, right? I mean, kind of oversaw a lot of that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, actually, before I went to Job Adder, the when we were our staffing company, we
yeah,
found a small little software company called CBizSoft,
yeah,
and they created this applicant tracking system for mostly IT, a lot of like offshore and stuff. And I reached out to their founder. And I'm like, hey, this software is awesome. Have you thought about doing it for other types of recruiting niches? And so we used their software, helped them develop it, gave them lots of feedback, whatever. The reason I'm telling you this is because after I ended my stint with Marketron was the name of the company I worked for. They hired me on because I had this background in their software and helping them develop it. They hired me on to be their head of sales and marketing, and so I was with them for 5 or 6 years. And then after that, I moved on to go to Job Adder and head up North American operations for Job Adder.
I love the networking piece in there of just kind of seeing an opportunity or have you thought about this and kind of like being excited about someone's software and like, hey, where else could you like that's so as I know as an owner, I was like those approaches, right? When I hear something like that, like, hey, you're doing great work here. Have you thought about that? It's just a little kind of like networking outreach lesson, for the listeners at home.
Well, I think
It
if to
kind of
drive
see,
that home,
yeah,
it's like doing things for other people without expecting something in return right away. I think is like what I got out of that. Like we just had a great relationship. We gave they gave us like uh, free software for a while in exchange for our feedback, our testing. There were bugs, things like that, but there was this kind of relationship, right? And then were able to kind of grow that later down the line out of that mutual respect that we had for each other, I guess.
it's such you get a lot of things at cost or discount or for free, right? Just by having a great attitude and kind of really showing that value, that partnership,
Mm-hmm.
and just being engaged and immersed with the process. I know I've been able to do that for other people. People have done that for me by just kind of showing up and having some enthusiasm about what someone's working on, what they're doing, or how it could impact their business, or vice versa. It's pretty far how that can go.
Yeah.
Just that kind of like likability piece is underestimated, but goes a long way.
Yep. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's all about the people, like investing in those relationships and not expecting anything in return. And lo and behold, things return, you know?
absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's go with because you founded Parsley almost a couple years ago now, and you started StaffUpApp at around the same time, correct?
Yeah,
Kind of like,
well,
yeah,
when I was working at Job Adder, a
yeah,
StaffUpApp had actually been already created from a guy named Rick Richard.
yeah,
And so we met at a conference in Tennessee, and we decided to integrate the two platforms. At that time, StaffUpApp was really just a mobile app that was like a job board you could put in your pocket, right?
yeah,
So we connected the two. We started growing the relationship. And that kind of built into its own company. I later came on to become a partner with him, um, and we've kind of developed that over time into something amazing. We can talk about that a little bit later, but
yeah,
before that, before I left um, Job Adder is people that are listening to this. I don't know if you have an audience in Asia Pac much, but Job Adder is kind of like the bullhorn of Australia, right?
Yeah.
It's a very big applicant tracking system, but most of their clients are in Australia, New Zealand, and then a very good share inside of the UK and Europe as well. Not as much in the US, but just like Bullhorn, Job Adder was big enough to be able to sign this kind of agreement with LinkedIn Recruiter to build an integration between the two platforms, right? Yeah. But as such, that meant Job Adder had to get rid of their Chrome extension, their sourcing extension that they had for sourcing on LinkedIn. That was LinkedIn's terms, right? You can't have a competing product essentially, so they had to make a decision. I'll let other people decide whether they made the right decision or the wrong decision. But I knew that once that Chrome extension was gone, there were going to be thousands of recruiters out there that weren't going to be happy because one, not every recruiter pays for LinkedIn Recruiter. Right. And that means if you don't have a recruiter, you don't have any integration with LinkedIn at all. You're back to copying and pasting profiles to your ATS all day, every day, right? And if you do have the LinkedIn Recruiter integration, anybody that's worked with Bullhorn, Job Adder, and LinkedIn, there is a lot to be desired about what those integrations provide. LinkedIn does not really, they don't really give you anything, right? It pulls over the name, the resume, and then it makes it really easy to send paid InMails and stuff from your ATS, but not a lot of other stuff that's valuable to the recruiter. So we knew there were going to be a lot of people that needed a good Chrome extension that would make sourcing on LinkedIn easy, efficient, no frills, no fuss. Well, maybe a few frills. Definitely
there's
no
always
fuss.
a few. Yeah, and there's always a little fuss. Yeah.
So Rick and I, before I even came onto StaffUp, we're like, let's build this. Let's just kind of do this as a side project and just make this available. And that's kind of where it got started.
I love that. So we'll talk about Parsley. It's because when people hear the price point, their jaws are going to drop, hit the floor, and they're going to race and not going to believe it, and then they're going to see it. But so it's a Chrome extension, right? I know it's kind of bridging between the ATS, the CRM, and LinkedIn. But yeah, maybe kind of go into. I mean, I think you talked about kind of the seeds of why you built it out, but maybe kind of go and explain the product a little bit more, the software, excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of ATSs have a Chrome extension. Most recruiters, if they're using any type of, good ATS, they probably have some type of a Chrome extension, right? You install it inside of Chrome. When you come to LinkedIn, it's going to allow you to maybe parse data from the page, push it into your applicant tracking system. Different ATSs have varying levels of how good they do this, right? Yeah. But the two largest ATSs out there, specifically for the recruiting industry, Bullhorn and Job Adder, they do not have this, right? So that's a huge portion of the user base. So essentially, think it's like a mini ATS. It's Bullhorn that follows you around LinkedIn. So if you open up a candidate profile, doesn't matter if you're on regular LinkedIn, LinkedIn Recruiter, Recruiter Lite, Sales Nav, works with all of them. But hey, I've come across Clark Wilcox's profile here. Oh, is this person in my database? Yes or no? If they are, what's our data in the database? Who's the recent notes from? What recruiters have talked to them? Are they being considered for any jobs right now? What stage are they at of the process? Do we have their resume on file, right? Those kind of things. So just at its basic level, just like kind of bringing that ATS functionality into LinkedIn. If they're not in the database, how quickly can I get them in? Just with 2 clicks, can I pull that information in? Shortlist them for a job, add a note, maybe add them to like a tear sheet or a folder, roll up list, whatever you call it in your ATS, build my lists. And there's lots of other cool functionality, right? But at its basic level, that's what it's doing. Stopping me from having to copy paste data back and forth, manually do stuff in the ATS for every profile I come across. I should just be able to stay in LinkedIn, get my job done, but also make my manager happy, because all of the data and activity I'm doing on LinkedIn should show back in the ATS so that we're not stepping on each other's toes. We're not double entering stuff and those kind of things.
Yeah, if it's not in the system and not in the ATS, it never happened, right? Like, isn't that the leadership tagline? Sometimes even I've had and had as a manager when I was at Aerotech with my team. It's like, if it's not in there, how can I know that it didn't happen? It's always like the bane of every producer's existence. I wouldn't just say recruiters. So that's super cool that you kind of have that and kind of bridge that gap, right? Kind of like a niche problem, but a huge niche problem. What's been some of the wins, kind of the case studies, like the feedback that you're getting from the customers? That's like, wow, this is like, this is a game changer.
Yeah, well, it's funny when you build a product that's so inexpensive, and then you get recruiters that come to you and say, "I can't live without this tool." And then you rethink, you're like, "Are we charging enough for this?"
Yeah. What are you charging again? What is it now?
It's
Still
$15 per user
15.
per month.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
We've got some really cool stuff that's coming soon. That'll be kind of like another tier that you can pay a little extra for if you want these additional features. But we want to keep it there. Like we want to make it accessible to everybody. We want it to be a no-brainer. Because some people are paying for other tools. They might be in contracts or things like that. We just still want to make it easy, right? I think everybody should have access to this. And if a
Yeah.
lot of people use it, then we're doing fine, right? So
Oh, I think it's so smart when people are trying to gatekeep so much. And yeah, people got to realize, hey, you're not LinkedIn, right? Or you're not one of these, but not you, but like any of the softwares. I think it's smart. Get people in. I know there's like the free trial and then the credit card, but like $15 is like super manageable. Every recruiter should be able to test that out. There's really no excuse not to, and kind of see if it works for you. And we added a month-to-month model digital recruit for our coaching because I know this is good enough. This stands on its own. I don't need to lock you into a 6-month, 12-month, or whatever agreement when I just got to meet you. Because if you come in and you kind of see things this way, I'm making my bet that a certain percentage of people are going to stick for a long time because like, oh, this is what I've always needed, or as you said, I can't live without it. And I think at $15 a month for this tool, when it's still like little, it's like those little but huge workflow things that make all the difference. So like you're solving something that actually needs to be solved. Whereas I think there's a lot of stuff in recruiting that is a nice to have and not a must have. And when speed is everything and that data entry and all that, like this becomes almost a must have tool because none of the ATSs, because of the way LinkedIn operates, like nothing's going to be 100% perfect. Like
right.
it's just not possible unless there's like a huge change in how LinkedIn operates.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's like the simple stuff, right? It's like bringing it back to the fundamentals, right? I mean, just keep recruiting. And yeah, I mean, I know there's lots of fancy tools out there that do all sorts of crazy automation stuff, and we do a little bit of automation as well, but it's really just about making the human itself more efficient in their day-to-day stuff, and eliminating like all these little annoying, crappy things you have to do every single day.
Yeah.
If we save you seconds every single profile you visit, or maybe a minute, think about how many profiles a recruiter visits in a day, and then how that adds up, in the month and the year, right? It's quite a bit of time.
It's a ton. I mean, I was talking before we started recording. I got a new computer on Sunday. I mean, this thing is like a spaceship compared to my horse and buggy, performance I was getting from my computer last week. And it's just like, what was I doing? I feel like I'm motivated to work like more, and I want to be on my computer more. It's just like, oh, because things like we're moving so slow. And if you have that, because the margins can be so tight and getting submittals out and interviews and time to fill, it is those things. But sometimes those things have been $200, 300, $500 a month for a software. No one's really even teaching you how to use the software. It's like, you could have all the bells and whistles, but then you got to charge for all that, but then you're not really training people. So then, these companies that are, they sell and 1-year plans and you're locked in and everything else. It's just like, oh, because you're just trying to recoup your cash flow and your cost and everything versus like, no, like get in and the product will sell itself. And we're going to bet on that, and the referral is going to be like a must have. So I love it. I love the model. I think it's trending towards what people want more of, which is just like, let me just see if this works for me. If this is going to be part of my toolkit.
It's weird. It's such a not a common thing in our industry. So we get people that come to the website and they're like, oh, this looks cool. And they're like reaching out to schedule a demo and all that stuff. And I'm like, no, you can just click the button, install it. It takes 5 seconds. It'll ask you to authenticate with Job Adder or Bullhorn or whatever. And then you can just use it for 15 days. And like, no need for a demo and no credit card or whatever. And people are like, well, so how do I install it? And what's the implementation process like? And I'm like, people aren't used to that, right? They
Yeah.
all think they need to get sold and go through this big process. So that's actually been one of our biggest hurdles is just like, no, literally, you don't have to do it, give us anything. Just play with it. And if it adds value to your life, keep it. It'll ask you to start paying 15 days from now. You enter a credit card, you keep going, and $15 a month until you no longer need it. And that's it, you know?
It's crazy. So you get a 2 week free trial, then it's $15 a month. I mean, yeah, I think believability is probably like, wait, yeah, like, are you not going to try to get me somehow, right? Like that can be that's pretty interesting. Um,
Yeah.
are you guys doing like trainings or like webinars or anything like that on that, or is it just like FAQs for kind of people to get caught up on kind of exactly how to use it? Or
We've got like a live chat on the website, so we do
yeah,
have support team, and then we also have like a full on like help desk that has like training videos and those kind of things, right? But it is like simple enough to where you really don't even need that, right? It kind of walks you through it when you install it. It's all very self-evident, and that's kind of the point, right? It should be that easy. But there
yeah.
are there are all training resources and stuff for people that just kind of like to have that as a safety blanket, I guess.
Yeah, nice. I love that. And so, what's the vision, right? What's the goal with Parsley? Is it a certain amount, of people and users that you can impact? Kind of different offshoots, within, from part of different solutions that you're looking to provide, as kind of an offshoot of Parsley, or like where do you see this thing? Hoping this thing goes.
We would like it to become like the Chrome extension for the industry, right? So, like I said before, like a lot of applicant tracking systems, they have their own, but it's also just kind of this like side thing that they may or may not do. And I don't
Yeah,
want to speak for every applicant tracking system. I know there's varying. Some people might put a lot of effort into this, some less so. But we want to make it as easy enough to where, if I leave one ATS and go to another one, I can bring Parsley with me, no problem. And to be more valuable than any ATS could actually build on their own, right? We'll do the heavy work of making this thing badass. You guys can plug it in. You can have your own as well, but we think it'll be valuable enough to where people will want to use ours. Then maybe we can kind of partner with more ATSs to kind of be their Chrome extension as well, right?
well, and I'm glad you said that, because that's one thing I want to make sure listeners understand is I know you are set up with a few ATS systems now, but even if it's not out there, it's one of the things you told me. You answered my question was, well, what if I want to connect with this? Like, hey, we can make that happen, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can figure out the integration, right, with ATS pretty quick. Once you figure it out once, then you figured it out once, right? I mean, I think that's like a pretty important part for people to know and understand.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and the integrating to the ATS is the easier part because most ATSs have a nice little API. We built the framework so that we can just kind of plug and play into the different systems. We started with Job Adder, we added Bullhorn, we're about to release Vincherry, I think in another week or two, and we want more if other ATSs are willing to partner with us. But lots of they're never gonna. I shouldn't say they're never going to be able to keep up. That's an arrogant statement to make, but that's the only thing we're focused on, right? Is just making this thing great. So, all the different versions of LinkedIn, being able to plug into different services. So we found like, okay, once I've found this candidate on LinkedIn, maybe they're a third level connection. What do I need to do next? I need
Yeah.
to find their email and their phone number, right? So we've built an integration with Apollo, so you can pull in email and phone information, but we'll also be building out the other integrations, other data services. So if you prefer Lusha or if you prefer Zoom Info or whatever, you can just plug your data service into that and kind of bring it along, right? Um, and then some other really cool features we've got planned. If you want, I can talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely.
That I don't think anybody has ever seen before that people are going to really really love. So.
All right. Well, are you going to give us the beans, or are we going to wait? Yeah.
so so we haven't even told our existing users this. Maybe a couple of them that we're kind of
Yeah.
working with to define this. But the big thing that especially managers of larger teams have said is, I love this tool, but I want to find a way to where just like our email syncs with our ATS, I need to get those messages synced in with the ATS as well, right? So the plan here is we're building out an integration that will allow you inside your ATS. One second here. Sorry about that, Clark.
Okay.
The goal here is to, just like your email integration, is actually pull that in to the ATS. So the Chrome extension right now, it uses Google Chrome side panel tech. So we can pull that same tech into your ATS. So when you're on a candidate profile inside your ATS, it can show you all your messages from LinkedIn. It can sync those messages back as notes into LinkedIn as well, so that when your team comes across, they can see what you've been doing on LinkedIn. You can initiate messages, you can send in-mails, send connection requests from your ATS. So when you're in your ATS, you got LinkedIn. When you're in LinkedIn, you've got your ATS. Kind of goes back and forth. So
yeah, that's pretty sweet. That's pretty sweet. Just make sure that you're a recruiter. Don't be looking on another job on LinkedIn. Because
we've talked about that.
They'll
Yeah,
get all your
about
messages,
privacy
right?
settings.
Yeah.
Because that's what the recruiters have told us. They're like, well, I don't know if I want every note going into the system.
Yeah.
So you will have the ability to kind of toggle things on and off and set settings for for specific profiles or people I don't want this to sync. Like a lot of ATSs do that now. They're like, we have an email sync feature, but we don't want to sync these particular email addresses, right? You don't want the founders' emails back and forth, everybody to be able to see in the system kind of stuff. So
we're gonna let go of Larry.
Yeah. That's what's taking the longest
like
to build, to be honest with you, is just those kind of privacy features so that recruiters want to use it, but also don't have data that shouldn't be going back into the system going into the system.
No, for sure. Well, I think it's good for people to know that when it is launched, like that's going to be taken care of. No, that's good. That's awesome. Well, Parsley's super cool, but then you also joined again the StaffUp app around the same time, and you and I haven't really like covered this as much, but I mean, I had the light industrial background. I came from staffing. There was no app for when I was when I was doing this. Was a whole 7 years ago. But how was that kind of like talk to us a little bit more about kind of StaffUp, the app, and how that's affected some of the clients and what's that done, what that does there.
Yeah. So I mean, Parsley is our product for the hardcore recruiters out there, right?
Yeah.
Go headhunting, going after really particular people for specific roles. StaffUpApp is kind of on the other end of the spectrum. It's really for high volume staffing companies. Doesn't have to be high volume, but really more traditional staffing, right? Where they're the employer of record and that kind of stuff. So there's these big pressures that are coming across the staffing industry right now. So one is that just technological progress is just like shooting through the roof, right? And companies that have a lot of resources, the big ones, the Ronstats, the Adecos of the world, the Arrows of the world, they've been able to invest in some of these technologies, in particular mobile staffing, right? Having mobile apps that allow them to kind of go to market and fill much faster. The other big pressure are technology companies, these gig platforms, right, that are coming in, and they're kind of technology first mobile staffing platforms, and they're raising billions of dollars to come in and try to eat staffing's lunch, right? So what's like a small to medium sized staffing agency to do? These things take millions of dollars to build a platform like this. So that's why StaffUpApp exists. We are building the technology. We have built the technology that allows small and medium-sized staffing companies to compete, with these $100 million staffing platforms and have the same level of technology. So all centered around a branded mobile app for their candidates and their clients.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, as a podcast and a business that supports the little guy and the little agencies out there, the smaller ones. I mean, it's great. I think the branded app stuff and some of those technologies out there, I love it. I mean, it's never been almost like a better time to be in small business in a sense because of some of these digital tools and the reach that you can have. And, people like yourself that are building and running these, part of these companies that are really focused on the SMB market, be able to compete with the big folks, big agencies. And I see with LinkedIn content, I mean, there's recruiters, solo recruiters, or agencies of 5 people that are running laps around, the big firms and those offices because they're able to get their quality of their work out there without lacking technology, because software speaking. So it's super cool, and I love seeing that.
It's so different than just like another bolt-on to the ATS is kind of what it is. I mean, yes, we integrate with the ATS platforms, right? But it solves a lot of problems around messaging, around scheduling, around timekeeping, around onboarding. Like it can, all that can kind of be automation, all that can be kind of consolidated. And the real benefit, the real thing here is that it's the candidate experience from
Yes.
discovering your brand all the way through, deployment, scheduling, payroll, my getting paid. Everything the candidate has, their experience with your agency can be done through this one interface,
So
uh,
cool.
which is really a beautiful thing,
That's
right?
awesome. What are, I mean, kind of the agency or two off the top of your head that's like, before they join and then after, like, what's kind of like a cool story, a cool win that you have there?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, I mean, a lot of our clients are startups. We have a couple really big companies. We got a couple mid-sized ones, but probably the funnest ones are the startups, right? The people that like they're building their company, and from the start, they're like, we need this type of a technology, right? We're not just going to go get the same ATS everybody has and do the same playbook. They're like, I'm going to differentiate through technology. And like
Yeah.
you said, like their recruiter to contractor or temp ratio is much, much larger, meaning like less recruiters for the amount of people that they can actually handle, because there's so much I guess automation is the right word. I hate to use that word all the time because I feel like it's a buzzword, but there is, right? So you have a lot more leverage per worker to kind of grow. So seeing these small agencies go from, 20 temps to 500 temps without having to hire, a recruiter for every 50 people that are on board is pretty fun to watch.
It,
And again,
Super
I
cool.
wonder if we're charging it. No, just
I think we did a pricing discussion next, but yeah, and that's, I preach that all the time. I mean, I've always said that an amazing team of 20 can have a much better impact, and more impact than a team of 200.
Yeah,
If done right, if you really leverage the tools and the content and the marketing abilities correctly, I say fishing where the fish are is number one, right? So be in places where your market is, and then that's where you leverage the tools to export and get as many legit human interactions as possible, right?
yeah.
And like that's kind of the whole like formula and the pathway. I know that kind of eludes a lot of people for whatever reason, but like that's how you don't have to work against automation, against AI. You can have it work with you. You just got to make sure that you're good, right? And then it becomes like, and then I think that's the bigger question. It's like, okay, am I actually good at the fundamentals of this job, or am I kind of getting exposed, right?
Mm.
That might be a whole other topic, but yeah, it's really cool the way you can leverage technology, like StaffUp, combined with a LinkedIn or job boards, or and a Parsley and all that, like, and just do 20 times, 50 times what you're able to do, say 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah. I think
So,
my favorite thing about all of it, there's a lot of cool stuff that we do, but my favorite thing is just helping agencies, the staffing agencies we work with, realize that they can stop paying Indeed and using these job boards, because,
yeah,
the paradigm right now is everybody posts jobs, get them in, not recruiters, like hardcore recruiters, they don't do this, right? They're picking up the phone, they're outbound. But
yeah,
for inbound agencies, they're used to doing Indeed and stuff. And so it's about teaching them, you don't need to do that anymore. You can
yeah,
start marketing your app on Instagram, on Facebook, on Snapchat, where everybody is. Get them to download your app. That's where the jobs are. And now you're building your brand much better. You're not paying Indeed, which is actually your competitor. They own 3 gigantic staffing agencies in America alone, right? And you're kind of taking that back, and it just kind of feels good, to
yeah.
not have to keep paying the man,
Rely on
essentially.
the Indeed teeth, if you will. Yeah, that or LinkedIn Recruiter. I mean, yeah, it's really nice. It's great that solutions like this exist. It's so necessary. And to your point, yeah, Indeed owning those staffing companies, and like LinkedIn kind of having their own monopoly, and that being a necessary evil. It's like, yeah, you got to sometimes work within the confines, but a lot of times there's a lot of solutions out there. I think learning how to vet which ones is one thing, but just knowing like that there is like, if you're relying on one thing or kind of one dimensional, like make sure to incorporate a little bit in your business and do your research, and and try things and work with people like yourself that actually come from the industry, right? And are building software and this tech like around from having been in the industry. So what recruiters are going through and have gone through and will go through. Right. I
Yeah.
think that's there's a lot of people trying to get into this industry that have never worked a day recruiting. And I don't know if their intention. I think they just hear like, well, recruiters are here, I can sell to them, right? Versus actually kind of knowing the shoes that recruiters are in.
Yeah.
It's huge. I love that you have that, obviously that background. It's kind of like it's everywhere. It's what's making these solutions that you have such high quality, and we just got to raise the prices, I guess. But uh,
No, it's not about that. Let's help more people, and
yeah,
it's just more of economies of scale. So we
absolutely,
joke.
absolutely, absolutely. No, I am kidding. Bryan did not tell me to say that. He never would. Uh, what I guess it's kind of we wind down, but what's it been like kind of being back in the entrepreneur space in this decade, say, versus when you first got out? Like, what are the lessons that you learned kind of getting back into being an entrepreneur that you were able to apply this time? How is it different? How is it the same?
Well, uh, it's not all fun and games. I guess I'll put it that way, right? I mean,
Yeah,
entrepreneurship is hard work. I mean, you work a lot, but it's towards hopefully a really good, payoff. Not
yeah,
just financially, but in other ways as well, right? Just from a gratification standpoint. So it's kind of a cliche, but it's like I would way rather work, 80-hour work weeks for myself than 40-hour work weeks for someone else,
yeah,
right? So just that gratification of going out there, and I think that's why people go to recruiting a lot in the first place too, right? Is that same kind of spirit.
yeah.
Um, Oh
Absolutely.
man, the other thing is just like you think you got these skills, and every time you get to a different level of business, you realize that you have to learn a whole nother skill set
Oh
and like
man.
almost reinvent yourself, right? So it's
Well,
like,
you're like a customer service rep. You're an accountant. Financial. Become a lawyer. All these things.
yeah, I learned
Uh,
like design software for
a
like designing user
design.
interfaces, and it's like I don't know if I
Yeah,
have to do that,
yeah,
and then raising money, it's like, oh, now I got to learn how to talk to investors and what are CAC rates and all these other things. Like I don't
yeah,
know, so
yeah. What are tax rates? I don't know. It's it's what makes it so fun, but it does like it's a lot, and that's why I can be a little bit harsh when I post and post content, because I want people to succeed. I want them to get there because I believe that they can. But man, there's no grind like it. To your point, if you give it a go, and you're not going to solve every problem every single day right on time, like you have to kind of figure some things out. But I'm with you, man. Like just having challenges like that and problems to fix versus thinking back to when I was kind of stuck at some jobs and I just had no motivation. Every day it was just like the energy zapped out of you. Um, it's night and day. Like nothing compares. I don't ever think about going back to anywhere
yeah,
else. Like it's just like full steam ahead, and we just got to figure it out every day as it comes, and it just makes life so much more personally for me fulfilling.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have good days, you have bad days, but at the end
yeah,
of the day, you're still the boss. You
yeah.
still get to yeah, celebrate your own wins and your own failures, and yeah, you got nobody else telling you what to do other than yourself, right? So
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, anything else that you want to leave the listeners with?
Um, gosh, I don't think so. I mean, we covered it well, right?
I think so. We're
No,
efficient.
no, I
Yeah,
really appreciate you taking the time to kind of talk to me about it. It's been a lot of fun. No, just keep at it, keep recruiting.
yeah. Keep at it. Get Parsley. Test it out. You got 2 weeks free. You got nothing to lose.
Yeah,
It's one of those that you don't have to worry about. 15 bucks a month. I mean, look, the margins are insane in recruiting. It's super cool. If you got an ETS, if you're wondering whether it can integrate, reach out to Bryan. Right? He'll make sure that you get taken care of. We'll have the website, your LinkedIn URL on the episode page, so people can connect with you and reach out to you. Guys, this is a no-brainer to sign up for. And if you're a smaller staffing company, check out StaffUpApp for sure. That sounds awesome. It's like I wish I had contractors so I could test it out. I actually have a couple people that do that I definitely want to let know about. So Bryan, man, appreciate you coming on, talking about your background, everything. It was super fun conversation, and I'm excited for the listeners to check this one out.
awesome, Clark. Well, thank you, man. No, I appreciate the opportunity and always good chatting with you, man.
Absolutely,
I love what you do over there. So
appreciate
keep building this profession up because it's worthwhile. That's for
it.
sure.
I appreciate that, man. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.